Hello, class. Today we're going to discuss Chapter 1, Introduction to Project Management. What is a project? A project is basically a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. That's just basically the Pmbok guide definition of what a project is. Projects require multiple things: an organized set of work efforts, progressively elaborate detail, a defined beginning and a defined end, which is very important, a unique combination of stakeholders. Also, projects are subject to time and resource limitations. We also have to answer to what we call stakeholders, an individual or organization who may affect or be affected by or perceive itself to be affected by a decision, activity, or outcome of a project, straight from the Pmbok guide itself. Project management, the application of knowledge, skills, and tools, techniques to our project activities to meet our project requirements. That's straight from the Pmbok right there as well. Basically, project management is just a term of how we manage projects, how we go about managing projects, and the things that we do in order to manage projects. Typically in project management, we deal with multiple work processes, which we'll go into a little bit later. We have initiate, plan, execute, monitor, / control, then close. Some of the trade-offs that we deal with in project management is scope, quality, cost, schedule, resources, and risk. We'll go into those a little later in the course. So from a project management standpoint, there's administrative tasks. There's leadership tasks for work associates. There's knowledge, skills, and methods applied to most projects. You got planning, documenting, control, visioning, motivating, and promoting. These are all things that go on when you're managing a project. The history of project management emerged as a formal discipline in the 1950s. It developed for aerospace and construction. It involved determining and controlling project schedules. Now, 2001, there's a slight change. Agile was created for adaptive project planning, originally for software projects. In recent years, more focus has been given to the soft skills of communications, leadership, and teamwork. How can project work be described? Well, we have projects versus operations. We have soft skills versus hard skills. We have authority and responsibility. We have the project management life cycle. Then we have Agile, which is adaptive, versus waterfall, which is predictive approach. We'll get into this a little bit later. Projects versus operations. Projects, always remember this. Projects are temporary. Projects have routine and unique characters. Operations are ongoing. There's no stop. Remember, projects have a defined beginning and a defined end. Operations keep on going and going and going and going. Soft skills versus hard skills, or soft skills and hard skills. So soft skills, they're activities like communication, leadership, conflict resolutions. These are key soft skills activities most project managers not only have to know, but master. Then we have the hard skill activities like risk analysis, quality control, schedule work, budgeting. These are skill sets that require a little bit more tact, a little bit more study. It's kind of like a science, and therefore it kind of makes it hard skills. So these are hard skills are something that's pretty much learned through textbooks and through processes and procedures. Soft skills are human type of activities, the human nature of project management. We have what's called authority and responsibility. One person assigned accountability. Project managers negotiate with functional managers, and strong communication and leadership skills to persuade subordinates. So these are three things that project managers typically do from an authority and responsibility standpoint. Understand, you're going to be working with a lot of functional managers. Functional manager is someone with management authority over an organizational unit. the manager of any group that actually makes a product or performs a service. That's the Pmbok definition of a functional manager. Again, as a project manager, you're going to be dealing with multiple functional managers. A functional manager could be a manager of accounting, or a manager of human resources, or a manager of marketing, or a manager of IT, maybe a manager of recruiting, et cetera, et cetera. Just a functional area within an organization. So we have what's called the project life cycle, or in other words, PLC. The project life cycle is a series of phases that a project goes through from its initiation to its closure. That's the Pmbok definition. Project life cycles vary among different disciplines, but generally are compromised of the same general stages. So we have what's called project life cycles. We have selecting or initiating. We have planning. We have executing, which includes monitoring and controlling. Then ultimately, we have closing or realization. These project life cycle stages, they change based off of organizations. They may have different wording, but ultimately, these life cycles are pretty much the same across the board. Some organizations may use different verbiage for these life cycles. A project must gain approval to move from one stage to the next. Projects are measured at additional points, so selection, progress reporting, benefits realization. These are how you want to measure some of these projects. I'm not going to really go over the predictive plan for the driven project life cycle within the measurement points. Just know that if you take a look at the level of effort, see how the level of effort increases once you get into planning and executing and closing, then ultimately closes out at the end. That's pretty much where I want you to look at. But no, this is a predictive type of extreme type of life cycle that emulates the waterfall method. Keep on going. So understanding projects. We have what's called the Project Management Institute. Basically, it's a formal body that defines what project management is around the world. We have project management body of knowledge. Basically, that's a set of instructions that's used to define what project management is based off of PMI standards and guidelines. We have the PMI talent triangle and the selecting and prioritization of projects, which we'll cover a little bit later. When understanding projects, we're going to cover some of the project goals and constraints. We're going to define project success and failure. We're going to take a look at using Microsoft Project and types of projects and scalability of project tools. So, Project Management Institute, what is it? It's the largest professional organization that produces a guide to the project management body of knowledge, Pmbok. We have what's called a talent triangle, which is a technical PM. We have leadership, and we have strategic and business management. When talking about the Project Management Institute, you have the Project Management Professional Certification, which is the PMP. Then we have the Certified Associate in Project Management Certification, CAPM. The PMP is one of the top IT certifications that's currently out there. It's a very hard test. It's 200 questions of multiple choice. But these multiple choice questions are very hard. It's not an easy test to pass. But once you pass it, it's recognized around the world, and you are officially known as a certified project manager when you have this certification. It's actually, for project management, it's a critical certification to have. Now, this other one, the CAPM, it's kind of a junior level certification. Instead of 200 questions, you only get 100. Me personally, I would forego taking the Certified Associate in Project Management and just go ahead and take the PMP. Reason being that there's a time cap on how long that certification lasts. Then then it has the same questions as the PMP except it's shorter. I say just go for the gusto and study for the PMP. The Project Management Body of Knowledge, Pmbok, it covers like about project life cycles. We have the 5 process groups and the 10 knowledge areas. A project management process group is a logical grouping of the project management inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs. So, what are some of the process groups? We have initiating, which defines a project or a new phase for obtaining authorization. We have planning, which establishes the project scope, refines objectives, and defines the actions to attain objectives. We have executing, which you complete the work defined to satisfy the project specifications. We have monitoring and controlling, where you track, review, regulate the progress of performance, identify changes required, or initiate changes. And then finally, we have what's called closing. It finalizes all activities to formally close a project of a phase. So basically, some people get process groups and phases confused. Some people say these are actually phases within a project management lifecycle, but Pmbok defines these as process groups. Some of the 10 knowledge areas that you need to know if you're studying the Pmbok is integrated management, which is processes and activities to identify, define, combine, unify, and coordinate the various processes of project management activities. We have the scope management, where you have the processes to ensure that the project includes all the work required and only the work required to complete the project successfully. We have what's called the project schedule management, where you're dealing with the processes to manage timely completion of a project. We have what's called cost management. It's another knowledge area. Processes involving the planning, estimating, budgeting, financing, funding, and managing and controlling costs so that the project can be completed within the approved budget. We have what's called quality management. Processes and activities of performing organizations that determine quality policies, objectives, and responsibilities so that the project will satisfy the needs for which it was undertaken. Then we have resource management, processes that organize, manage, and lead the actual project team itself. We have what's called another knowledge area is communication management. You're dealing with processes to ensure timely and appropriate planning, collection, creation, and distribution, storage, retrieval, management, control, monitoring, and ultimate disposition of project information. We also have what's called risk management, a very important knowledge area in project management. It possesses of conducting processes of conducting risk management planning, identification, analysis, response planning, and control to increase the likelihood of and impact of positive events and decrease the likelihood and impact of negative events in the project itself. We have what's called procurement management. Processes to purchase or acquire products, services, or results from outside the project team. We have stakeholder management. You have processes that identify the people, the groups, or the organization that could impact or be impacted by the project. You have to analyze their expectations and impact the development strategies for engaging them and managing their conflicted interests. So, we have an area called selecting and prioritizing projects. When selecting and prioritizing projects, you have to identify potential projects first. All parts of the organizations are involved. Could be various functional groups of organization that goes into selecting and prioritizing projects. You have to determine which projects best align. You have to determine which projects align best with the organizational goals. So whatever that mission statement is, or whatever that goal is for the organization for that particular year, the projects that align with their mission statement or the goals for that particular year will most likely be selected first. We have organization priorities, which are understood and communicated and ultimately accepted within the organization itself. So when you're selecting and prioritizing projects, these are some of the questions that you need to ask. What values does each potential project bring to the organization? Are the demands of performing each project understood? Are the resources needed to perform the project available? Which projects will best help the organization achieve its goals? Is there enthusiastic support both from external customers and from one or more internal champions? These are questions that need to be asked that will help the actual selection and prioritization of projects within the organization. Project goals and constraints. Projects are undertaken to accomplish specific goals. The scope and the quality of performance goals. Yeah, the scope. This is basically from the Pmbok guide is the sum of the products, services, and results to be provided as a project. We have subject to constraints in time and cost. So when you're dealing with this, you have to deal with quality, which the degree of which a set of inherent characteristics fulfill requirements, right? So we got the scope, that time, and that cost. Those are very important areas that can restrict constrain your project goals. So when you're talking about project goals and constraints, obstacles or challenges may limit the ability to perform. Opportunities may allow projects to exceed original expectations. Project managers, or the acronym called PMs, decide which goals and constraints take precedence. Then additional constraints might be resources or decision makers' risk tolerance itself. So when you're dealing with project success and failure, you have deliverables, which include all agreed upon features. You have outputs that please the customer. Their customers use the outputs effectively and they're ultimately completed on a schedule and on a budget. Schedule and budget, very important. That's going to impact whether your project succeeds or fails. Also, that scope, which we talked about in week 1. You got the scope, we got the schedule, and you got the budget. Those are all things that matter, that will determine whether your projects will succeed or fail, and they're all intertwined together. Completed without heroics. You have to learn new or refined skills, or organizational learning. You have to read the benefit levels, business level benefits. These are all things you have to take in consideration with project success and failure. So, why do projects fail? There's multiple reasons for this, but some of the things are insufficient resource or time. So people to do the work or the time that's allowed to complete the project. Unclear expectations. If you got expectations that all across the board without no clear vision, the project's going to fail. Changes in the scope, not understood or agreed upon. It's what we call scope creep. If the parameters of what we're working on in a project change constantly, yes, the project will fail. Then we have the stakeholders disagree on expectations. We got to make sure all the stakeholders are aligned. Then ultimately, we're at the inadequate project planning, right? So that planning phase is very important within a project. If you don't scope out and plan accordingly and well, the project will fail. So types of projects, you can classify it by industry, whether it's IT, whether it's construction, whether it's education, whether it's marketing. I mean, the list can go on and on, but it can be all based by industry. You can classify it by size. Is it something that, from a size standpoint, will it be a big, medium level, or small type of project based off of how your organization defines that? We have classifying by understanding of project scope. So we got to know what is all entailed within the project, what we'll be working on. And we have to have a better understanding of that. And that, based off of that scope, we'll classify what type of project we're working on. Also classifying by application, what type of application that we're working on as well. That helps when determining the types of projects that we work on. So, classifying by size. You got large projects often require more detailed planning and control. Classifying by timing of a project scope clarity. How early in the project manager, the team are able to determine the project scope. Classification by application. All projects require planning and control. The art of project management is when you use certain techniques, how much detail to use, and how to tailor techniques to the needs of the project. Scalability of project tools. All projects require these 5 items. Project specifics, understanding the work involved. You got the budget and the schedule, which are very important. Determinations, the assignment of available workers and tasks, those resources that we talked about earlier. Then ultimately the project management itself. What processes are we going to use to manage this project? Projects are scaled up or down to meet the complexity of the task. So let's talk a little bit about some of these traditional project roles. We have project executive level roles. We have project management level roles. We have project associate management level roles. And you see right here, there's all types of examples of what executive roles are. You got the steering team. You got the chief project officer. You got the sponsor. You got the managerial roles, which is project manager, the functional manager, the facilitator, the senior customer service representative. And then we have the associate roles, which deal with the core team members and the subject matter expert, also known as SME. So the steering committee, what the heck is the steering committee? Steering team is the top leader, CEO, and his or her direct reports. They select and prioritize resource projects, ensure that accurate progress is reported. We had a sponsor active role, right, where the charter, you can charter the project and review the progress reports. The sponsor behind the scenes role can be viewed as a mentor to the project manager or assist the project manager. Here's an important note. The sponsor, you'll deal with the sponsor a lot. This is a person or group that provides resources and support for the project and is accountable for enabling success. So they're your champion, they're your advocate. They want to see the project succeed, and they will help you along the way. So when we're talking about project executive roles, we got a chief project officer or PMO. PMO stands for Project Management Office. So when you're dealing with the chief project officer, it deals with support of project managers and required compliance and project deliverables, directives, right? So the Pmbok definition of Project Management Office, PMO, an organizational structure that standardizes the project-related governance, processes, and facilitates the sharing of resources, methodologies, tools, and techniques. Basically, the PMO is a department or office within an organization that helps police the right way to manage projects within an organization. Let's talk about some more project management level roles. So let's discuss the project manager. What do they do? Well, they're directly accountable for the project results, schedule, and budget. They're the main communicator. They're responsible for project planning and execution from start to finish. And they're limited formal power. And what does that mean? Typically, they direct, they guide, and they lead a project team. However, they can't typically hire or fire employees or resources. That's up to the functional manager. The project manager, by definition of the Pmbok, is the person assigned by the performing organization to lead the team that is responsible for achieving the project objectives. Here's that functional manager again, right? What is a function manager? It's a department heads. They determine the how of the project work. They supervise the work, and they negotiate with the project manager regarding resources and allocation of time of those resources for particular projects. We have a facilitator. The facilitator helps the project manager with the processes of running, meeting, and making decisions. We have what's called a project management team, which we have core team members. They're basically a part of the team throughout. Then we have what's called subject matter experts, or SMEs. They're only involved in the part of the project, not involved in the most planning or decision making. So they're experts in a particular field that ties into the successful completion of the project. So the project management team, by the Pmbok definition, they have members who are directly involved in the project management activities. So let's talk about Agile roles or Agile projects, right? So when an Agile project, you have the senior customer service representative. They identify and prioritize constituent requirements. They ensure the project progress, support customer desires, and they are continuous and have an active role. That's what happens in Agile project from an executive level. On a project level, you have what's called a Scrum Master. And you have project management serves as lead, a collaborator, or facilitator. The Scrum Master basically runs what's called a daily Scrum, where development teams meet for about 15 minutes and they discuss about what they did today, what they did yesterday, the other day, and if they have any blockers and barriers. And the Scrum Master helps facilitate the team, remove blockers and barriers, and they make sure that the needs of the development team or the QA team are being met. So let's talk about the Pmbok exam. Basically, it's everything in this textbook is consistent with the Pmbok's most recent 6th edition. That's the most recent edition out there. The PMP, which is the Project Management Professional Certification, is about 200 questions, like I stated earlier. The CIPM certification now is about 150 questions. Like I said, it's a waste of time to take the CIPM. You might as well just go ahead and take the PMP. Don't mess around with the CIPM. If you want to learn more about this, there's a website right there. You can click on the link. And that is it for today, or Chapter 1.